Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast, coming in your ear holes.
October 1st. We smash it 10 yards tonight. The buck we call Pickles. A south wind pushing us back to the zag.
Got her stand on our backs.
Set it out and see what happens. You on it?
Alright.
Got the air going out of me.
Absolutely drilled him.
And boom, he's that good buck.
Go get my buck, then we're gonna go get homie's buck.
Urban piece as hell.
Got him. Pickles is dead.
Kevin Gates, both kills on hanging hunts.
My first public land buck.
Nice work, dude.
Look at that. Triple brow on the right.
I'm digging that.
Bucked out October 28th. An absolutely incredible season.
Here we go.
Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast, coming in your ear holes. We're talking velvet bucks this week. Where can you find them? How can you hold them? How can you get on them? And we're talking to Clint McCoy, at master at this. This guy is always on a giant. He's on a giant right now. Killed 2 giants last year. Giants year before. His family's killing giants. Just a really cool guy. Really genuine dude that knows his way around whitetail. And there's a lot of good intel in this episode on where you're going to find these bucks and how you can get on them. It's getting the people to make this possible. We're going to get in the show. Start off with Ride On Optics. One thing I love about the scope for them, been messing with it on the muzzleloader quite a bit, getting her sighted in, is that thumb wheel, that extended thumb wheel. If you got a glove on or you need to do a quick change, sometimes those dials are a little hard to turn, but that extended thumb wheel makes it real easy, real simple to tune it in exactly what you want. And I had someone message me about it and say, a guy at work was asking me if it could clear he was worried about the clearance on it, whether it would clear his gun with the thumb wheel, and they are removable. So if you do buy the scope and you can't use a thumb wheel for some reason, they are on the top of the scope. So most of the time it would clear, but on some guns they won't. It is a removable thumb wheel. You just unscrew it and you're good to go. If you want more information there, you check them out at rideonoptics.com.
All right, guys, switching gears here to Exodus Outdoor Gear. Last week, we introduced to you guys their new product line, the Exodus MMT arrows, custom-built arrows. And this week, we're going to kind of get into some of the more technical knowledge for you guys. So the Exodus MMT is just simply built different. It features patented and proprietary 4K outer layer weave at a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's going to increase your torsion strength for durability while eliminating weave gaps. This offers balanced strength from all sides of the shaft and identical shaft diameters, so that's unmatched accuracy and performance. The MMT carbon inner tube strengthens and stiffens the front end of the arrow, allowing unmatched arrow recovery, reduced energy loss by forcing the shaft into equilibrium at a faster rate, and providing noticeable more downrange efficiency. So the manufacturing process uses ceramic mandrels. This allows for slower, more consistent cooling, curing for better material integrity, and creates uniform shaft diameters with no taper. These arrows are also fleshed with airfoil technology. Aerospace technology meets wilderness. These fletchings on the Exodus MMT create a quieter flight, faster spin rate, tighter flight profile, and less crosswind effect for more efficient downrange arrow flight. So you guys can check these out on ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Check out their 3D arrow builder, and a half dozen is going to run you $119.50, and a full dozen is going to be $239. And also from Exodus is something I get jacked about every year. Velvet Fest is finally here, guys. This is pretty much the official start to deer season for us. And this year, Exodus is going to run Velvet Fest from July 15th through August 19th. And they got some awesome prizes for people that are going to use the hashtag VelvetFest on social media. Also, if you're in the market for a trail camera, Velvet Fest is a perfect opportunity to get ready for this season. Exodus is going to be sending out exclusive savings through their email newsletter throughout the campaign. And to get things started, they're going to throw in 20% off any multiple Exodus render or any render bundle for the first 100 orders. So that's going to start on July 15th. Just use the code VelvetFest to lock in those savings. Also, in addition to that, every single camera order is going to come with a random price card, and we've been told to include some big deals, including the new Exodus MMT tailored arrow. So you guys know over the last 7 years, Exodus has been shoving out quality products, and this is no different here. So Velvet Fest is underway, guys, here in just a couple days, and I'm ready to get going here. So get your order in there to get saved up to 15 to 25% off your next camera or arrows, and be sure to get signed up for their newsletter at ExodusOutdoorGear.com.
All right, is that it?
That's it, man.
All right, guys, let's get into the show. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, we got Clint, the back buck slinging champion. How's it going, brother?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. I always like being on with you guys, man.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. You're a voice that I think has the right perspective on life. You're a badass dude. You're a kick-ass hunter. And I love when we can have you on because I think your voice needs to be heard by more people. Really enjoying your posts when you're making them. I love your story format writing, man. You got that down. When you start writing a post, I'm right there with you. So I don't have that. I don't have that skill. I can't use descriptive words and bring people along in a story. I write a post on Instagram. I'm like, man, this probably sounds stupid. I can't.
No, see, that's the first thing you got to get out of your own mind. Just seriously, let it rip. Like, I'm my own worst critic, and if I put something out there just for fun like that, you don't need to pressurize it. No, just let it rip, man.
Yeah. Well, you are the king at finding summer bucks. We get a few pictures, and you share a little bit with us. You're always on a giant this time of year. We were talking kind of about who we wanted to have on for summertime, and homie's like, man, Clint is always on a giant. And I'm like, yeah, he is always on a giant in the summer. And we know that you put a lot of nights in out there finding these deer this time of year, probably more than 90% of the other guys do. So just give a brief description about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get right into it.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in southeastern Illinois on kind of a small family dairy farm. So we've got some family ground here, and, it's prairie ground. We hunt broken farm timber, broken timber ag ground, and not far from the Wabash River. So we have some good genetics and good soil around, decent hunting. But I'm a knock and talk kind of guy. I'm a veterinarian by trade. So a lot of people locally I treat their pets all the time, and it's a good way to break the ice with landowners and such. And that's really helpful. And you can get some permission from neighbors and family and stuff like that. It's always nice because you're kind of hunting where you grew up. You get real familiar with an area over time like that.
Yeah, but like, all right, this month's flea treatment is free as long as I can hit the back 40.
There have been some shadier deals done than that.
Hell yeah.
Whatever it takes, brother. Well, like we were saying, you are always on an absolute giant this time of year, and not only like one giant, you're on a lot of really good deer, a lot of velvet bucks. So what are you doing in a nutshell to find those deer this time of year?
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do, and it didn't work. I used to think that just driving the roads with a pair of binoculars and a chuck was enough. It's not. Scrap it. It's borderline next to useless in my opinion anymore, because I think so many people stick to that, and you can use it, it's viable. But I don't do it hardly anymore at all. People vehicle pressure deer away anyway around here, and it just doesn't work worth a shit. But I like to observe from as far away as I can. Typically, I'm looking at bean fields or hay fields here in Illinois. The ground here is prairie, so it doesn't roll as much. And there are places where you can see a long ways. There's places that you can't. It's not all flat like north central Illinois, where it's just nothing but pancake. But there are places that I can observe from long distance. Typically, I'm looking at beans, looking at alfalfa fields, clover fields, even short corn fields. As soon as wheat harvest hits, I love hitting fresh wheat. just the same night the combines are in the field harvesting. For some reason or another, I feel like whitetails really are drawn to that open, like, hey, wait a minute, there used to be a giant field of shit that we couldn't walk through here. And now we can like walk around and go, man, this is pretty nice. And I like hitting those wheat fields right when the combines are there. You can really get, typically in about the last part of June, and you can really get on a good buck then, sit back and observe from distance and look for shade lines. And that's what sucks sometimes about, these hike-in and sits. I try to use these spots kind of year in, year out. So I'll have like a little, like what these guys that film wildlife call a hide, somewhere in the weeds, up on a knob. Hell, an old oil tank battery is one of them. It's stuff like that. Just kind of getting creative with being able to get in, long range it, and sit back and observe for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And sometimes we're following deer from the last year, what we didn't get shot, like we were talking about earlier there, and very rarely anymore are we starting with a 0 hit list. We're starting with a net 4 or net 5 from last year that we know have survived. We've got trail camera images, got sheds from. So that's always it's a super good way of starting the summer, is by already knowing where some might be, following up with it, check it off the list. Like that one I sent you a photo of, he was a number 1 hit list buck, and went in there and found him. Now we're on to the second and the third on the list. And we try over the summer to just build a list. You're not going to be able to kill every one of them. Some of them shift, some of them get hit by a car, some of them neighbor kills. But if you can start the list or a season with a list of 10 or 15 shooters, boy, you got a lot to work with. Sometimes too much, run yourself all over the place. That's another topic.
Yeah, if you have that many shooters located or bucks that you're interested in, like you said, if a couple die or a couple shift, more than likely you're going to have 2, 3, 4 that you got a pretty good shot at when season comes around by just having those numbers in your favor. So with the big mature bucks that you're finding in the summer, where are these bucks most of the time located? Are they all random, or is there something that's similar?
What I do see, some of them when they're grouping up in their bachelor groups, is we get a lot of prevailing souths and wests here, winds, and they need airflow because they're hot. It's hot. Think about it. You ever been in the middle of woods on one of those days? It's like 95 degrees. It's humid as hell, and there's no air moving, and you're just standing in this creek bottom, like, God damn, let's get out of here.
Yeah,
they're in that all the time. So, in my opinion, they want to be somewhere that it's like the reverse of thermal cover in the winter. It's more like thermal cover for cooling purposes in the summer. Edges, fence rows that have a nice breeze flowing through them, somewhere they can see if visibility, places where air flows through there. I feel like, and that's not always a given, but they don't like to be any hotter than me or you do. And I think they like to get out into the fields of an evening and just kind of gosh, get out in the open,
Yeah, I agree with you. If homie knows Tina's timber, it was loaded with summertime bucks. So I always had this thing, like, if you want to find summertime bucks, go to a spot where you think there'd be no deer during deer season. Like, it's too open to have deer when hunting season's on. There's
100%.
bucks in there in the summertime. And that's exactly what Tina was. Tons of velvet bucks in there. It was just a big open timber, bunch of ridges, bunch of big oaks with no underbrush hardly. And the wind blew through there, and they just loved it during the summertime. But when, after the leaves fell, there was nothing there. There wasn't
Right.
deer in sight. But that's where we found the summer bucks. Is the same thing as you, as those more open airflow, because they know they're not threatened by much. They can see a long ways in there, and it's so much cooler that, and most of the time, like I said, it's a lot of that kind of openness is close to a field, so they don't have to go very far for food at the end, towards the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I like. don't forget like shade lines. They don't necessarily have to be bedded in the woods if you think about it. If there's a big shade line that creeps out into CRP, shit, that'd be great. You're not in the woods where the air doesn't flow and you're in a nice big grassy bed. Like, I feel like that would, you find a lot of those bucks in the evenings down along these shade lines. It would make sense to find them in the shade during the middle of the day too. But it's more about staying cool, I think, don't you?
Yeah. I've seen a bunch of them just bedded in bean fields, just chilling out in a bean field, kind of like right on a shade line, just out there, just chilling, then you just catch the tips of your rack and you're like, oh shit, there's buck out there.
That's right.
Bedded up. So, like I said, they're a different creature this time of year. They don't mind being visible. So find a giant is where he might be there during the season, but he's probably not going to be bedding in the same area that he is right now.
So Clint, you said you found you're on one right now. You got your number one hit lister located, and now you're trying to fill out that second, 2, 3, and 4 spot there on your list. Now that you've got number one located, how often are you going to go back and try to keep tabs on him throughout the summer?
As much as possible, as much as I can. I have been on scouting missions for him probably 10 times or so. I've seen 3 out of 10 nights, and but I can do it here. I can get in and out with this hide spot that I've got. There's 2 of them that I've got for him, and I can get in and out almost perfectly every single time, no matter what the wind is. Got long distance visibility, but I want to know who he is on the hook. You know what I mean? Like, I just wrote an article for North American Whitetail about this called profiling your buck. Not just, yep, he's alive, but does he travel alone? Does he travel with 2 other bucks? How does he act around them? Does he act like dominant, or is he subordinate even though he's really big? Like, there's a lot of elements that you can put together just by watching him, I think. Now, you can't put it all together, but the more you see him before D-Day, when you're getting that string tight, I think the better. I think it's worth the pressure. It's worth it.
Yeah, and just to correlate along with what you said there is, like, before we were running trail cams in video mode, we just had pictures, and then we started running video mode, and then we'd have an encounter with a buck, and it'd just be another piece. And just like you were saying, the more you see them, the more you get to know that deer. And I don't know how many times we will either have an encounter with that deer or shoot a deer, and like it just all of a sudden, like, everything fills in the blanks for us, So I can definitely see how getting eyeballs on him more and more and more is definitely going to help you later in the season.
Yeah, there are some bucks that are really, like in the summertime, if you see them, you can just tell they kind of want to be off by themselves, off to the side. There might be in a bachelor group, but they're like way out in the perimeter, and they don't ever like beef up towards another one. They're just kind of subordinates. Bucks like that, I don't really want to call to. If like, hey, there he is, better call. Oh, don't call to him. Like, you just got to read who you're dealing with. Now, you can't. It's not an exact science. There's nothing. There's no metric that we can measure here. But I think the more you get a personality vibe on him, the better off you can use. You might find his Death Star spot. You know what I mean? You might find that one little piece that, like you said, homie, puts it together in the click.
With these bucks, you said maybe 10 or 15 of them. How far are these deer roaming right now? Are they staying pretty tight to a core area, or are they traveling a pretty good distance this time of year?
Individual differences. Most of them are pretty tight to the same general vicinity, especially if they've got shade, water, and beans or forage. But yeah, I did see a shift though a little bit when everybody started it was really dry around here. And all the farmers in the area cut their wheat, bang, 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 all on the same like 4 or 5 days. And all of a sudden, the bucks I was seeing in some areas were starting to really either fall off the radar. I couldn't find them again, and they shifted around some of these wheat fields. Now there was quite a bit of wheat planted around me this year, but I think it's dependent on available food source and crop rotation, stuff like that. But by and large, most majority of them, they hold pretty tight, I think. Don't you guys?
Yeah, I think if we find a buck during summer and he's still alive, I feel like if we put a trail camera back in that core area where we had him last year, boom, he's back. Then they have their summer zone, and the bucks that we find, they don't really change it.
Yeah.
They might, during hunting season, they might do radical stuff. Like we got one buck and he has no home range. He has no core area. He just does whatever the hell he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. And then, but during the summer, he's normally in the same spot. You know, he has been, and that's where we first found him, you know, blasting the field, and boom, there he is. And then we put, you know, years of work in on him and realized I don't think that he's a killable deer. He's just out there just doing whatever he wants, man.
Man, that deer I was chasing a few years ago, I called Dobie McMahon. He was the same freaking way. And I finally just had to, no joke, bail on him. Like, I can't do this anymore. He has had no discernible core, this is where he likes to bed. Not even during the time of year. Like, sometimes you can get a seasonal bed pattern on some of these guys. Never could put the puzzle together on him. And I finally just had to, like, look, I'm done here. It's not that he's unkillable. I just haven't learned through a lot of time investment what I need to learn, and I should be going and investing that time.
Yeah, he's
elsewhere.
not worth hunting because there's easier bucks out there.
Maybe not easier, but more that you have an advantage over, I think.
Yeah. If this deer comes by, hell yeah, he's probably 110 inches by now, but he's going to get swacked. But it's just the fact that, I mean, he came back in October that one time, homie, at like noon, right? Like the 4th of October, he was gone. Then he showed back up at like noon.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing?
Just doing his normal thing, man.
Yeah. Just come
Random.
back, hit a scrape at noon on October 4th, and then rolled out. Yeah, we didn't see him till the rut.
What he's doing is he's feeding you false intel.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm in here, boys. Come get me. And we're like, oh shit, he's in there. He's in there. We gotta go get there. Yep.
Saddle up, guys. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of talking about trail cameras here a little bit, so let's get into that. I know that you utilize them some. I know that you're finding most of these deer off of past knowledge of where these deer are, kind of on your hit list. But how are you utilizing trail cameras right now to stay on?
I'm glad you guys have been talking about it. To segue into this, you guys have made mention already a couple times that if I go back into a spot, if I know a buck is still alive from last year and I go infiltrate that spot that I got him on camera last year, good chances are he might get him again, right? So I think a lot of guys, and I used to be this way, where I would just flank field edges. You know what I mean? Just shade line the hell out of every camera I got over beans, hay, easy picking stuff, right? Well, then I would struggle. I would have a great big hit list, but then I would struggle with what to do with it. So what I'd like to do now is find a bunch of good winter sign and pin it fresh on an Onyx map. And if I've got a holdover buck that's in that same area, instead of like field edge and everything, find him, just confirm that he's alive. You don't need 100 photos of him, but then take those cameras, sink them back into those historical pins from last winter. Do it 4th of July weekend. That's what I did. I was putting them over interior scrapes, interior buck beds, big doe bedding areas, all on video mode, just like you're saying. The more you can learn, the better, right? And back the hell out and let them soak. Just let them rip. And if that big bastard that you're watching visited a great big scrape last year and he hits it once or twice in the summer, and we're talking a natural interior hub scrape, if he hits it once or twice in the summer just to nuzzle it and check it, He's gonna be back in there. He will be back in that spot sometime. Like it's not perfect. That's a good theory to try. And I've had some super luck over those interior scrapes with cameras and hunt sites.
Yeah, we've had way better luck off of sign in the woods and scrapes, heavy trails, creek crossings, instead of the field edge trail cams. We've got some good deer on field edge, but we get a lot of random deer that we didn't even know existed on that field edge. And like you said, it kind of throws a wrench into, man, I got this deer over here, but now I got this giant that just showed up that you have no intel on. You got 2 or 3 years of intel on this other buck.
Right.
You kind of wash him and try to get this new buck. And more than likely, if he's a random buck that just showed up on that field and you ran cams there all last year, more than likely he's not going to be there. And I feel like that's what, like you said, a lot of people get tied up into. They run them on, a bait site, or they run them on an ag field for us or something. And they're getting a lot of big deer and they get really excited and they're thinking, man, I'm going to go after this one. And then they're mad because that deer left. I think it's way more valuable to spend time on, don't wash out the giant that showed up, but still spend time on your, hey, this buck was here last year. I got a good idea how I can kill him, instead of throwing that guy to the curb and trying to pick up a fresh new hottie that showed up.
Yeah, it's easy to get drugged to the side and been like, yeah, I've got, like you said, I've got plenty of historical data on one, but then you get this new rando that drops your,
Yeah.
You get the first series of photos and you're like, oh, okay. And you start the process all over again. You don't need to ignore the new hottie. You just need to keep tabs on him.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to keep going after those one. The more you got on one, we're talking historical. I love finding them the year before I kill him. That if I don't kill him after the first 365 days in that following hunting season, I'll probably never kill him. It's something I don't know about him, you know what I mean? But man, if I can find a little bit of winter intel on him or the season before and he's still alive, love it.
Yeah, it just gives you so much more that 1 year of hunting them. I think we're at like the 3-year stage. We need 3 good years of hunting them. Then we got to start hunting deer when they're 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
So we can kill them at max potential at 6 over here. So, but yeah, that's what it takes us. It takes us a couple years to understand. And I think, a lot of it for us is just, it's new property, man. We haven't had property long enough to understand what it is that makes the deer on there tick. But one thing about summer is, once you've hunted a property 4, 5, 6 years and you got that good spot where you're like, okay, this scrape in August is going to be money. If you're not in there messing that scrape up, that scrape's going to be money. Like it doesn't change, especially if you haven't killed those bucks that hit that scrape. So I think people kind of over effort this time of year, overthink this time of year, when if you're on ground that you've hunted for a long time, this is good. Okay, let's run a cam there. Let's have a one for sure deal, and then let's use some cans to find a giant.
Yep.
What since we're talking about bucks going in a new hottie, and like I always believe like a random buck on there, like first time, it's a fluke, okay? And like I've got to see it 3 to 5 times and be like, okay, he's kind of hanging around. This is just gonna be like a summer buck. Like every buck I get that's in velvet, I think is just a liar, because he's gonna be gone. I've been heartbroken so many times about getting a nice velvet buck on cam, and then next thing you know, the son of a bitch is gone come October 1st. So it's got to be more of a repetitive thing than it is just, oh man, but it is nice to get a picture of a random giant out there. I will say that. Clint, in your experience, what percentage of your velvet summer bucks are you going to have that are going to be huntable this coming fall?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely less than 50%. I've not always been this way, but over the last 5 years or so, I've really tried to start the season with a strong list. because my wife likes to hunt, my boy likes to hunt, and my brothers like to hunt, and the more we got that we know of, the better. But how well do you know that list? So like you were saying, homie, those ones that you only have just maybe 3 months worth of summer intel on, if he shifts out of there, he might show back up during the rut and so on and so forth. It's good to know about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't let yourself fall in love with one like that. You got to be objective and have enough. Like I try to have enough like checks in the kill box before I go in on one. You know what I mean? Like it's hard decision to make, and sometimes it's revolves around the weather or cold fronts or crop harvest or the stage of the rut even. Like it's really easy though to pare that list down, and I'd say probably if I had to give you a solid number, 33.33%, a third. Those are the ones that I'll pick 3 or 4 and really go in whole hog on.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty solid number. I was going to go about 40-ish%. It's a little less than 50. It's definitely less than 50.
I agree.
Just off that, like every $2 you get on cam, one of them's gone. And, it's always like the big ones always leave. And you always got that bullshit 2-year-old hanging around that'll just keep that scrape opened up for you all summer long. You can't get rid of that guy. So,
Love that guy. You ain't got to go in there and refresh it. That's the OG.
Yeah,
there.
that is kind of exactly what you want right now.
Yeah.
Guy just keeping that thing going.
I'll tell you one spot that I found this last weekend that I've never really tried this before. So right where Wildside was bedding last year, I hiked way up in there just out of curiosity, thinking, I wonder if there's anything bedded in there this summer. And dude, I am not kidding you, within a foot of where this deer was bedded last summer, and a lot of confirmatory, like classic standing up out of his bed and stretching video. You know what I mean? Dude, there's 2 great big buck beds in that same exact spot, and I flanked that thing with video cameras, not in the bed, but the trails leading out of it, like hoping he'll walk underneath it and with his back to it. There's already something. And so I've never had that phenomenon. You always hear about guys saying that, yeah, an old mature buck will, hone in on another one's territory once he's gone. How often do you get to practice that? Never, not very often. I thought, hell with it. I'll put a couple cameras here just for fun and see what it brings. So I'm just going to let those things rip until about, second, third week in September. And then slip up there when it's on a day where it's kind of warm and dry. See what's in there.
That's how I killed my second October 15th buck, was on a bed that a buck I killed came off of. Went back, killed that buck early, went back in there during shed season, and it was a lit up a sign. I was like, damn, the buck that was using this, there's no way he made all these rubs and shit fresh looking. I mean, he was dead October 15th. And then found it, hung a stand on it, knew there was another buck using it, went in there first hunt and killed another one off it October 15th. So crazy, man. Just he moved out and that deer moved in. I killed him in October.
So let me ask you a question. Why are they there?
I've said this 1,000 times. Big bucks like big buck areas. If there's a reason why that giant is there, something about it makes them feel right, gives them that tingle, and then another buck that potentially has the genetics, potentially doesn't, but goes up in there, realizes that there's no one in that zone, and says, "Man, this has got everything I need to survive," and they just move in. We've seen it year after year. If you see a giant buck in an area that it's not the rut, more than likely there's going to be another giant buck in there within the next couple years. It's just there's just something about the genetics of the ground, the area of the ground, the pressure. They just like those areas. But I think, I don't know if it's a genetic thing. Maybe he's got a little bit of his bloodline in there. They feel the same way. I don't think it's that deep. I think it's just it worked for one buck. He liked it. And I feel like all bucks are different, but when they get to a mature age, they get more similar in the way they act. They're not aggressive. They're kind of loners, most of them. You got some bully bucks, but most of them kind of don't come in calling. They get more alone, get away from other deer, want to be by themselves. And I feel like if you kill an older deer, another older deer is going to move right back into that bed.
And that bed I found, dude, is such a superior location. It's got all the elements of terrain feature and security, and like we're talking maximum security, right? It's so impenetrable that it even sketches me out going in there in the middle of summer. Like, you just don't want to foul a spot like that up. But there's enough cover. I think I can get away with it when the conditions are right. But I'm not kidding you, dude. Those beds are almost carbon copies of one another. Like they're right on top of one another. It's in the same little shitty spot. To look at it at face value, you walk right by it. It's just one of those areas. But I think you're right. Those older bucks kind of have a knack for finding what they like, and they like to not be harassed.
Yeah.
By anything, coyotes.
Yeah.
Bobcats, coyote hunters, coon hunters, anyone. They're going to be in there where they like to be secluded, man.
The buck that moved into mine, he hit the same rubs as the deer that I was targeted and killed, but he moved his bed 5 yards lower down the hill than the old buck, which I thought was weird. But was easier for me to kill because he was 5 yards further out of sight for me to get in the stand.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
So I was like, oh, this is going to be better. So I moved in closer on him than the other buck. And he stood out of a stand, hit his scrape, walked right to me. And I was hunting right on the transition of where it's thick as hell to where it opens up. He popped into the open, not just more open timber is all it was. That transition line, during season, there's something about those transition lines that I draws to. I want to be in thick shit, but I want to be able to shoot. And I think those bucks like to flirt that edge to where they can see, but then they can get into the thick stuff in an instant and be solid. But this was on a point. He had kind of a point with 2 rolls on each side. So he'd go off either 3 direction, and then he had a flat that come up to Oaks, and he was 250 yards off the field. The first one I killed probably 150, 200 yards off that bed. The second one I killed like 75 yards off of it, just because he gave me that extra stretch to go over there. But so summer bucks, are you keying in on summer beds right now to find these deer also?
Experimentally, like when with HBK that I'm working on, that big hit lister, that's kind of one element that I didn't have a lot of last year while we were hunting him, but I got a really good indication of this year when I winter scouted him. And so I do have a few cameras that I squeezed in tight to some of that real thick, and some of it's just like you said, dude, some of those transitions from really thick, gnarly, impenetrable stuff to wide open. And man, there's something about those. So I've got a few cameras on bucks. If I've got a reasonable winter suspect and I want to just investigate that area, I'll throw up those cameras in the summer with a great big fat SD card in them, 10-second video clips, and let them roll until about, late September, early October. Go in there and investigate on a hunt sometimes, Yeah,
homie, that makes me think of that Fleming piece. You remember that bed that we found there on that double roll point?
Where your buck come out of?
Yeah, but the one that was in the bottom stand.
Oh, okay.
I went up.
Okay, yeah.
That was like a perfect bed. And we were going to run a cam on it and never did. But there was probably a giant in there during the summer. And then we checked it this fall, and there wasn't anything in there. So it was a summer bed. But it was another one of those spots, man, where it was just like, this is just too perfect for a 2-year-old to be bedded in. You could just
You made mention of it where a buck will sometimes hole up on a spot where he's got what I call a jump zone, right? Where I could jump to this side and put the creek in between me and the bad guy. I can jump to this side and put another hill in between us. I can jump to this side and be out in a wide open field and turn the afterburners on. So I like those beds that are like that. That gives them multiple hop spots. That way they can avoid anything that's coming their way. It's the right way. They absolutely love that.
Yeah, and that's exactly the scenario that the bed Cody was talking about was, and I mean it was a huge one. Like it took up the whole damn berm, and you could just tell it was a bigger deer than like a 2-year-old. On the verge of summer bucks here, have you had any experience, or I know you like to experiment with a lot of different shit out there. Have you done anything with any type of water holes?
We live in the prairie, but we get enough backflow from the river and creek water that I just haven't put a lot of time into creating like artificial water. But in the summer, if I'm on a prairie spot where I know it's been super damn dry, and there's an old scrubby cattle pond or any kind of unusual water source where water might be limiting, yeah, I'll try some cameras over water. Especially when it's been like, if you're in drought monitor status, I feel like water's a good idea, but you got to keep in mind whitetails being ruminants. A lot of the stuff they're eating that's pretty green, they're getting their water out of plant material as well through wet matter intake. So I think water when it's limited is a great play in a hot, dry summer. But if you live in floodplain ground where there's water everywhere, even though it's summer and it's hot, it's less valuable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I want to kind of shift back to the trail cameras on these buck beds or trail cameras that you have on these trails going in there. This is something that Cody and I have kind of just put in our brain here when we do put cameras out, is like, what is the expectation? What do I expect to be on this camera when I come and check it in a month and a half or 2 months? Some of these beds I think are summer beds, or maybe something that you've seen in the winter and you're going to set up on since you're going to leave it for such a long time here in the summer. So kind of just detail out what you're expecting from some of these cameras, being that it might not be fire right now, but as it gets closer to season, when it starts to count, it is going to be more valuable.
Yeah, homie, I just put out on the 4th, I just blitzkrieged a bunch of stuff that I needed, but deeper stuff, not just field edge shit. And I got a couple of cameras on a spot where I know there's a shooter buck holdover from last year, but instead of focusing on all of his shit for a minute, I wanted to know more about where the does are bedding in that area. And so what I want to see, these are 2 random bullshit trails that I know connects 2 big sections of doe bedding to the north and to the south. And if the trails come through there on an angle, so it quarters the wind and he can smell everything from one direction and so on and so forth. But these little trails that I put them on are little dumpy creek crossings. All I want is a steady flow of does on a camera like that. And every now and again, I want a summer buck to come cruising through there, just taking an excursion. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, I'm gonna put a stand over one of those probably. And that's just an experimental. Like I know there's good deer there, but I need to know more about how they're using that terrain where I want to hunt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about is when the does bed, most of the time they don't change their bedding. Like they got their spot, they got their travel direction that they're going to go. They're not like a buck where he just disappears. If you got does bedding in one draw, more than likely they're going to be there throughout the rest of the year. I don't see a big shift in does. So if you especially if you're on a new piece right now, I think a guy should hang some cams to figure out where the does are bedding.
Absolutely.
Especially if he has no past history or scouting on it. If you don't get it done in October, you're going to be dependent on those does a lot, and you need to know kind of what they do, for one, to know where the bucks are, and for two, to know how to hunt the property without boogering the does.
You know, and I think that's why our private piece, Cody, is becoming shittier the later in the year it gets, because we've seen the doe numbers dropping.
Mm-hmm.
So
neighbors love to shoot does. We don't have a problem with neighbors shooting bucks, really.
No.
But they're in there and they shoot the crap out of does. And we killed one doe off it in 5 years.
Yeah.
We just won't kill does out there because there's just not very many does on the property. There's a lot of bucks. If we could hold more does, that place would be fire.
If it was
we
October,
need to trap a couple yearlings and release them in there and be like, all right, right here, bean field, water, everything you need, bunch of grass. Just don't leave. Just stay here. I won't kill you. We'll make a pat right now. Just chill up here.
That's a real thing, though. Like the last couple of years, a couple of the bucks I've shot were targeting. I mean, we were targeting that buck, but I wasn't hunting aggressively near his bed or anything spooky like that. You know, later in the year it gets, the more I drift over to travel corridors in between doe beddings, you know, and it's not just high volume corridors like people talk about all the time, the magic funnel, right? Well, yeah, those creek funnels and stuff like that, funnels exist and they're great and all, but I want an avenue trail that leads through or adjacent to the backside of downwind doe bedding. You know, like we get a lot of prevailing souths and wests here, and I want a nice crosscut trail that goes behind that doe bedding so I can set up on the downwind side of it and hopefully intercept him. You know what I mean? And it works. Like it takes a lot of experimenting, and sometimes you just got to go try something random before you kind of unlock it and go, yeah, this is the avenue. This is the pipeline, we call
it. Where those key, you know, even if it's 2 does, 3 does, like we got patches of 3 does and they were on that one cam every day in that bottom. We know exactly what they do. Sometimes they had bucks with them, sometimes they didn't. But that 3 doe group is when homie almost killed a 190-inch deer off that same 3 doe group. You know, we've been following those same 3 does and pretty much know their direction of travel. No one's killing them. And sometimes there's a giant on them, you know, just because we know we ain't got a lot popping. We ain't got a lot on trail camera. Okay, let's go hunt the doe pack. They're either, you can hunt them in the morning on the left or the evening on the right. Like, that's your choices. You know, there's just not a lot of choices there. But sometimes just being like, all right, I haven't checked this doe group out over here. Maybe one of my bucks has hold up one of them. Knowing where they're at is key, and you can find them right now.
Oh, yeah. And I sometimes, you know, I'll put pins in those Onyx maps where doe bedding is, and I'm sure it probably doe bedding shifts some when they're fawning and you know, and having and lactating, supporting fawns, but I think it all stays reasonably close to similar once all that dies down, and it's repeatable year in, year out. You know, I can take you to a farm right now, any hour of the day and night. You can walk in there and scatter does like matchsticks to the wind every time.
Yep.
And if you've got a target buck that's in that area, you know, once you get past about November the 7th, at least in my experience, you know, it's time to start focusing less on strictly buck sign and buck habits and start really keying on some of those doe bedding.
Well, it just exactly what Cody was talking about is like, that's the part where you stop, like you have to stop overthinking the shit. You don't have anything on cam, nothing's really popping, nothing's really moving. So what makes the most sense? Go to where you're seeing deer moving and go there and set up. And then next thing you know, giant just damn near falls right in your lap. And that's the part of our game that we're getting better at, is like, just stop overthinking the shit. Just go out there and put in a good hunt.
And stay positive.
And so, yeah, stay as positive as you can for as long as you can.
Yeah.
Even if you're getting your ass kicked, like my wife was just kidding me. I wrote an article for North American about power of positivity, and she laughed when I told her the title. She's like, they ought to have to live with you around November the 7th.
Same over here.
She says every year it's going to be the worst year you've ever had, but it never is. Now is it? I'm like, she's got a point. So I need to practice what I preach, maybe, I guess.
Yeah. It's hard to stay positive when you're just getting your ass kicked,
Yeah, but you never know, man. It takes that.
No, you never know.
It takes that 1 minute. You got to be there.
Yeah, that's the key. You got to be there, and you got to be not just in the woods. You need to stay in the game to where you know where you need to be. Being in the woods is key, but you gotta still be in there thinking, game planning, and making moves to know where to go.
Well, like you were just mentioning, like just hunt with some common sense. Like ask yourself, like, what is the goal of today's hunt? Who am I after? And where are we at in his annual calendar year? Whether it's October 1st or whether it's November the 15th, you got to see it without seeing it. You know what I mean? You got to speculate on it and give it your best shot.
But don't put no witch dust on it.
Yeah, no bullshit. Don't put no bullshit on it. No cute stuff. That's what I can't
no cute shit.
No more cute shit. Ain't no time for cute shit out there. I gotta kill deer.
Yeah, I'm trying to kill.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on, homie, or are we good to wrap this one up?
I got everything out that I wanted to get out.
All right, Clint, you got anything else?
I think that's it, guys. I appreciate you having me, and thanks all for the listeners for paying attention to us too. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on once again and gracing us with your presence. And I already know what you're on, so I can't wait to see him on the ground. He looks like a magnum out there. All right, guys, boy, hope you enjoyed that episode. Go out there, find your velvet buck, keep tabs on him, and track that deer down. It's all about putting the work in. That's all year round. And now it sucks. Everything sucks. Shooting your bow in the yard, it's hot. Out there, bugs are biting. It's just a crappy time of year to be a whitetail hunter. But the good stuff's coming. You just got to embrace the suck right now for the next few months, because it's going to be go time before you even know it. Like always, try to do the right thing. Try to leave a legacy, and Whitetail Legacy is out.